What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome into another edition of the NFL Weekly here on the network. We break down everything the NFL has to offer. We are staring down week 14 as we speak. So we record here on Thursday, the 4th of December. And of course, when I say we, I mean myself and my co-host and friend, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing well, thank you. Here we are, just a few more shopping days left until the big day. What are we at? 3 weeks away. Boy, didn't that just come out of nowhere and strike a nerve.
Yep, that the panic alarms, they'll get louder. I am a notorious Christmas Eve or Christmas Eve shopper. So yeah, the alarm bells, they're going off, but they're kind of like a whisper in the wind right now. As we get deeper into this, every Thursday or every week we do this, they'll get a little louder and louder for me. Myself personally, obviously, as most of you can see, a different little setup did move. We'll probably have a little, definitely will have more decorations and not just a white wall behind me. But for the time being, here we are. And again, week 14, we weren't here for week 13. And, we always start this show off by kind of looking back and want to, maybe switch it up here a little bit. And we are going to look back at the last couple weeks and our thoughts on it. But just checking in on our friend Raider Jim, because unfortunately, the Raiders seem to just continue to go lower and lower and lower. Another very tough loss this past week against the Chargers. Raider Jim, how are you doing? And overall, just maybe the temperature of Raider Nation, as we will, of course, dive into the game in a little bit. But the temperature around Raider Nation right now.
Oh, let me tell you, I have, there's a core group of folks that I go back and forth with on X or Twitter, if you still refer to it as such. And wow, seldom have I ever seen so many. I'm not even going to bother to watch it. Why would I waste my time? Why did I waste my time? There's not the same, everybody's fired up on game day. It's like now the messages that come across are, well, at least it'll be over pretty soon type of an environment. And I will say what I do really am getting entertainment out of is some of the Raiderettes on this thread. These women, they bring the locker room talk. Let me tell you, they would probably make a lot of guys in locker rooms blush with the things that they post. Hysterical. And that has been pretty entertaining. But overall, everybody, a lot of common denominator, a lot of common thread there. It's the ownership, it's the coach, it's he should have stayed retired. Me personally, where I'm going to go. We're number 30 in offense, but not just number 30 in offense. We picked a running back as our first draft pick, and we are 32nd in rushing. In the entire NFL, he's averaging 53 yards per game. He needs to average 73 over the last 5 to reach 1,000 yards. He's going to go down possibly as the next JaMarcus Russell.
No, I'm not ready there. I'm not going to let you go there, Raider Jim. I know there's a cliff and I know it looks juicy. It's 14 games, or I guess 13, or I guess maybe even 12 for the Raiders if they've had their bye. It's not a good offensive line. I think for him, it's unfortunate because I would be interested to see his fourth quarter yards, because they're probably ridiculous, because they're probably, actually, you should probably look at fourth quarter carries, because unfortunately, I think with the Raiders, they're in just so many situations where they just got to they got to throw the ball. Very, very unfortunate situation, but I'm not going to let you give up on Genty yet. You got to give me at least until next year. But I will give, Raider Nation and Raider Jim, I mean, I don't know if this is a little bit of hope. I think it's maybe more parallel to your locker room talk with the Raider Nation. But there's a lovely site, and they're all over the place, but it's Tankathon. It'll give you all your odds of getting the number 1 overall pick, because Raider Jim and Raider Nation, it is officially mock draft season for y'all.
It
You
is.
need to you got to bite the bullet. And yeah, if you got to go for a walk on a Sunday instead of watching this team, which I completely understand. But yeah, just kind of hope for bottoming out. And that would be an opportunity, but you do have to get it right. And I don't know, the quarterback picture I talked about it about a month ago is very different than what we were staring down. There were a lot of teams that would have loved the first overall pick that needed a quarterback. Now a lot have questions, but that's for months down the line. But I think for Raider Jim and Raider Nation, I can at least give you a little solace that, hey, there is at least something to look forward to in the draft. But I will give you one final question, Raider Jim.
Sure.
And then we'll get to our thoughts overall. But do you bring back Pete Carroll?
No.
No. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of 1 year coaching or anything like that, but I expected Pete Carroll to come in and at the very least would change the culture or change the attitude, and it has not happened. And he looks as lifeless as Pete Carroll can look. That's what he looks like on the sideline. It's very unfortunate. And as a Pete Carroll fan, myself as an SC fan, it is unfortunate. And I think we have to agree. It is because he's better than this. And I really do think the Raiders are as well. I don't think they're great, but I think they're better than this. But at the end of the day, you are what your record says you are. That's what I think Bill Parcells said. So all that other stuff, it's all horse excrement. Anyway.
Yeah, and then here we are, one more season where Max Crosby, the wear and tear on his body, you're not going to play at that caliber year in and year out without taking a beating, and he's already taken a beating, and his knee is messed up now. So time's running out on him, I think, too.
Well, and even the want and the desire, you're gonna go full bore in the offseason if the team doesn't, and again, Max Crosby isn't a general manager, but if they don't make the moves that I think a lot of people at the very least expect them to try and make. Geno Smith experiment has failed. I think we can all agree there. You got to move on, and I think you have to somehow, some way, get an offensive line in front of that.
Absolutely.
Because I think everything else builds out from there. But Raider Jim, overall, your thoughts last 2 weeks and really where we are in the season as a whole.
Wow, didn't the Kansas City Chiefs surprise us all? I mean, again, we said it the last time that we recorded. Neither of us thought that this is what we would be saying about the Chiefs, fighting for their playoff lives and things like that. But 6-6, and it's not going to get any easier. They're pretty much done. They're out of it. And I don't know how the Chief fan base is handling that. It can't be setting very well. On the other hand, we've got the Eagles who are still playing excellent ball, and they go out and they trash the coach's house. What is going on?
Not playing excellent ball, Raider Jim. I'm sorry.
But you don't do that.
No, you do not. And I will get to that. I 110% disavow when I talk about the Eagles. I will talk about that situation, but not excellent ball. We have not played well last week.
That's true. No, absolutely right. And it's just, wow, you look at the playoff picture right now in the AFC, and it's amazing. I mean, Buffalo. Everybody thought Buffalo was going to, okay, this is their year. This is their year. Boy, that song gets old after a while. And we kept saying it for the last 3 years, I think. Oh, it's going to be Baltimore. It's going to be Buffalo. And even Baltimore, they're going to be fighting for their lives this weekend against, they're playing Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. And watch out, Joe Burrow is back.
Yes, he is.
That is going to be interesting because they're going to start creeping up on people. They've got enough time left to be a legitimate contender. Shadur Sanders continues to be Shadur Sanders. That's enough to be said about him. Indianapolis, wow. They're having a rough patch right now, and they've got a big game coming up this weekend. So going to be interesting to see what happens overall in the AFC. I think it's going to go down to the wire because nobody, with the exception of Denver, seems to be wanting it.
Yeah, and even New England at the top, their schedule has been very, very, very. Look, it's a last place schedule. That's how it works. That's kind of how we always do see a team go from last to first. It seems like every year, and I believe the Patriots will be that this year. I believe they were in last. Obviously didn't make the playoffs last year. That's the main takeaway that I have right now. We're looking at the Patriots, who I don't know. Maybe it is the schedule, but at the same time, Drake Maye looks like the real deal. He's probably I think he's negative money to win the MVP. So a heavy favorite to win an MVP as we're essentially going into the last month of the season. I think Mike Vrabel has that identity figured out, and their defense is very, very good. That's going to be interesting. They do have a excuse me, a bye this week, so a little bit of a break for them, and then I think they'll come back with Buffalo next week. The other side of it, Raider Jim, you brought up Kansas City. Look, they got, I think, a 37% chance to make the playoffs, and trust me, and that's crazy to think of, 3 months ago. But this team is not dead. Obviously, there is no margin for error. They have to win out and probably get a little bit of help. But the AFC, I think, look, the division is pretty much done. But if this team sneaks in as a 6 or a 7 seed, I don't think anybody at the top of the AFC is going to feel comfortable. And again, I understand I will continue to be the paranoid character in the horror movie. Yes, I don't think Michael Myers is dead. I'm sorry. It's going to be very, very interesting for that. Two more things. Carolina. This is a team that I cannot make heads or tails of. Unbelievable. And I think what I've kind of figured it out is obviously, they are much better at home than they are away, which is kind of a bit simplistic, but I really think for Carolina, it's when the lights are shining brightest in terms of the national spotlight. When they're playing Monday Night Football, when they're playing Thursday night, a standalone or this or that, when all football eyes are on Carolina, they seem to almost turn into a bit of a pumpkin. And then when maybe not all eyes are on them, there's, playing at the 10 a.m. window here on the West Coast on a Sunday where, if you don't have Red Zone or Sunday Ticket, you're not seeing them more than likely. But I think Carolina is a team that is very interesting. And at the very least, I'm just very impressed with Bryce Young. He essentially was given the bust label, 8 to 10, 12 games into his career, especially because of what CJ Stroud did. Now, what's crazy, I think you redraft, and I think Bryce Young goes before CJ Stroud, and that's no real disrespect to CJ Stroud. It's just more of the inability to stay healthy. But Bryce Young, very, very proud of him and his resilience. And finally, the last thing I'll say on last week was just how bad the quarterback play was. And I hate to call out Max Brosmer, but that was just unbelievably bad. And the one person who should be so grateful that Max Brosmer was starting was JJ McCarthy, because we were over here throwing dirt on. Yeah, we were throwing dirt on JJ, and all of a sudden we see the alternative. And even for Carson Wentz, it's like, oh man, okay, Carson Wentz was at least, making them competitive. But yeah, and again, no real shade towards Max Brosmer. Trust me, he's getting it from all directions. He'll be the first to admit that was one of the stupider decisions to make. And for Kevin O'Connell, I don't think he needs to worry about job security, but I think going forward, he needs to right this ship very, very quickly. But overall, I just think there was a lot of bad quarterback play. And I don't know if that's late in the season or anything like that. But just those were my kind of takeaways. But again, I'm not ready to, until the coroner gives me the time of death on Kansas City, I am not ready to turn the page there. But it is time for us to turn the page on. Oh, Raider Jimmy, got one other thing?
No.
Oh, got it. Sorry.
I'm good.
Turning the page on to our game previews. We do have our final slate of buys coming up this weekend. Carolina, New England, the Giants, and San Francisco. So after this week, we will all be on the same number, at least of games played. Thanks, Cowboys and Packers. We have a tie out there that we have to somehow Pythagorean theorem into that. Anyways, diving into our first game of the weekend, it is going to be the Denver Broncos heading to Vegas to face the aforementioned Las Vegas Raiders. The Broncos are going to be 8-point favorites. 41 is your over-under. In terms of the money line, Denver minus 435 and Vegas plus 325. Raider Jim, obviously no one gets the floor before you talking Raider football. What thoughts?
Here's what I think. I think the Denver defense is going to have a field day on Sunday because they're just good. They're good against the pass. They're good against the run. They're just good overall. They're sitting at 10-2. And even with that kind of a cushion in the AFC West, everybody wants to go out and beat the Raiders, even when the Raiders aren't good. It's like they remember things that they got picked on in the past in the schoolyard by the bullies. And now the bullies slowed down. So we're going to go put some Post-its on the back of the bully that say kick me and embarrass him. So that's probably what is going to happen. I don't see any way, shape, or form the Raiders are going to put up 20 points on the board. So I'm going to go under on this one because they'll get their one touchdown or their 3 field goals, and that's about it. Denver, on the other hand, Bo Nix is probably going to sit back there, have time to throw, have time to open up holes to offensive line for the running backs, and just look for Denver to have an overall good game. That's the hard part, is definitely this could go over just by virtue of Denver putting up 35 against the Raiders. As far as the spread goes, not going to touch it. -8, very achievable. Boy, the Raiders are just too inconsistent and playing too poorly for me to even look at the line.
Yeah, it's Denver. This is unfortunately a mismatch, at least in terms of momentum. The one thing I will say about the Raiders, at least statistically, they are average defensively. Against the run, they're 15th. Against the pass, they're 18th. Unfortunately, the points allowed, that's where it kind of spikes up. But I also do think that's, unfortunately, the interception set a lot of those points up themselves. I think Denver is a good team, but they seem unable to blow anyone out. And that was, very apparent. What was it, Sunday night, when they had to go to overtime against Mariota? Or maybe it's Mariota. I don't know why they continued to enunciate the "ta" on Sunday night. But anyways, and then even going back to, I think it was all the way at the start of the year, Tennessee almost took them week 1. So this is a team that, and look, they win close games. That should be commended, no doubt about it. But 8 points is a lot in a divisional game at home. But I am with you. I am definitely taking the under. I see this as a 17-10, a 16-9 type game. Denver and Sean Payton, no, they don't really need to open up the playbook a ton here. And again, I think Vegas's defense is the strength of this team. And again, that's not saying a ton, but that is at least where they can say, hey, we're not bottom of the barrel here. So I think maybe they're able to kind of keep that under control. And I will buy a 0.5 point just in case, because it does seem like extra points being missed. The 7 number might just turn to 8 or 6, depending on however you want to look at it these days. So give me a 0.5 point. Vegas plus 8.5 under 41. But yeah, I do think Denver gets the job done. It's just a divisional road game. They haven't shown the ability to blow anyone out. So moving on to a very, very intriguing game, and maybe the final nail in the coffin, even for me to admit. It'll be Sunday Night Football. The Houston Texans head to Kansas City to face the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to be 3.5 point favorites. The over-under sits at 42. Of course, this is Sunday Night Football. Houston plus 170 on the money line. Kansas City minus 200. Raider Jim, Your thoughts?
Yeah, Houston offensively is starting to come around finally. They had a little bit of a rough patch there, but they're not looking too bad now. But it's the other side of the ball that is going to lead them to the promised land on Sunday, because Houston defense is monstrous. They are just incredible. And the Kansas City offense, while statistically pretty good, when you watch them play, they're inconsistent. They make more errors this year than I've ever seen them make in the last 2 or 3 years. Houston's on the bubble. Win gives them a much better percentage chance of sneaking into the playoffs. And even with that, they are going to, they have to win to stay even with Indianapolis and or Jacksonville, whoever wins that matchup this coming week. Boy, it's going to be a good game, but I think Patrick is just going to walk off the field frustrated once again. Chief Nation is just going to be sitting there, dumbfounded. They're going to be in shock, I think. But look for Houston to take care of business. Give me Houston +4 on this one. I'll go an extra half point. As far as the over-under, I'll go a half point down, and I'll say that Houston offense clicks this week. Give me over 41.5.
Yeah, I think y'all probably know where I'm going with this one. Until the Giant is dead, I'm riding with the Giant. Houston, I think, figured something out, or at the very least got the mojo right in the fourth quarter against Jacksonville, that crazy whatever 3 or 4 weeks ago. And it seems like they've consistently been able to put things together, and it really doesn't seem to matter who's at the helm at quarterback, whether it is Davis Mills or CJ Stroud, or because that defense is so good. Fourth against the pass, fourth against the run, I believe. Let me just check that one more time. And they also have the stingiest defense when it comes to giving up points, which very helpful in a sport where whoever scores more wins. So I like that Houston defense. This is the last stand for the Chiefs. I think they have to win this game. They know they have to win this game. I'm going to buy a half a point, get it down to Kansas City -3. I think Patrick Mahomes, look, they have the number 2 passing offense, so he hasn't necessarily been the problem. I mean, I'll just give y'all a little like the way I do my research. I put a spreadsheet together, and I just get the running offense, the passing offense, the points per game, pass defense, run defense, opposing points per game. And I put them all together and essentially take the average of the rankings 1 out of 32. The Chiefs are still the third best team in that formula in the league. They're good at pretty much everything statistically. I think at some point it's going to click. And again, we're not talking about, the Cincinnati Bengals or, the Denver Broncos. We're talking about the monster that is the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm just going to keep riding with them until they're fully dead. But I love to lose money on Kansas City. I do. I really, really do. So give me Kansas City -3. And I like the over here because, again, if Kansas City is going to win this game, they have to go over 42 points. If this is a 20-17 game, Houston wins it, in my opinion. I think it's got to be not necessarily a shootout, but push Houston over their whatever 17 or 18 points per game allowed. That's what they have to do. And I think Houston will take care of their business for the most part as well. But moving on to Monday Night Football, a very interesting NFC East versus AFC West matchup. It is the Philadelphia Eagles, my Philadelphia Eagles, heading to Los Angeles to face the Chargers. The Eagles are 3-point favorites in this one on the road. 40.5 is your over-under. In terms of the money line, we have the Eagles -150 and the Chargers +130. Obviously, I will get this one started. Going back to the Kevin Patullo situation, who, of course, if you aren't familiar, the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, his house was egged either Sunday or Monday night or I guess maybe Friday night or Saturday night this past weekend as they played on Black Friday. They obviously took a loss. Kevin Patullo has been taken a lot of heat, rightfully so, in terms of the profession that he is in. But the minute you take that outside of the stadium or the facility, that's where I think you need to pull the handbrake and get back behind the line as soon as possible. And this is well beyond the line. And I get it. Look, I'm not so unbelievably unaware of the fan base that is the Eagles mania, or bird gang, as we like to call ourselves. It's probably the worst out there. I mean, I think we have like an 8 to 10 year run on the worst fan bases in the league. And as much as I do like kind of being the villain and the barbarians and all that stuff, this takes it way too far. You don't involve another man's personal life if you have a problem with them professionally. And to be completely honest, none of us really have any skin in the game. To be going to another person's house. I don't care how long you've been watching or how many season tickets you have or this or that. That's ridiculous. I completely disavow it. And I do think most Eagles fans will disavow this. But I will say these individuals obviously are not smart. I don't know their age profiles or anything like that, but they're not smart for doing it. They're also not very smart for filming themselves doing it and then posting it online. So if Big Dom hasn't already found these gentlemen, I'm sure there will be a knock at the door soon. But yeah, completely disavow that. No matter what you do as a professional, you shouldn't have that brought home to your family, especially on a sports sense where it's just a bunch of people who are bummed out that we're 8-4. The sky is somewhat falling, but we're still in first place. But anyways, with all that soliloquy being done, that housekeeping, seems like there's always needs to be something. Obviously, for the Eagles, I believe this is the biggest game of their season. I look at a lot of corollaries of or parallels, I think might be the better term for it, from the 2023 team that started 10-1 and then essentially, I think, lost 4 out of their last 5 or 5 out of the last 6 and then got blown out by Tampa in the first round. Or are they a team like last year that started 2-2, similar situation, even though it was obviously earlier in the season, and they were able to grab a hold and figure it out? Eagles are 8-4. They're a game and a half up, or game plus up on the Cowboys with their tie. So again, I think this is the biggest game of the season. I'm going to be very interested to see how this team responds with the challenge that is ahead of them. With that being said, I would like to just say how happy I am for A.J. Brown that he's getting his targets. He looks so happy. We don't have any Instagram messages, any drama that way. I mean, we're losing football games, but at least A.J. Brown is happy. So I can sleep well at night. And I do think a lot of Eagles fans, that's all we really care about, is if A.J. Brown is happy and if he feels like he's being utilized the way he needs to. That's what we're here for. Anyways, with that being said, the biggest concern from Friday's loss, obviously the performance was not there overall, but the defensive line's inability to stop the run, that was a concerning sign. To see, oh man, I'm not even going to try with I've already forgotten, DeAndre Swift and the other individual. His name's a little difficult. He beat me in fantasy, so no disrespect for not remembering him. But Manungai, I believe. Anyways, 2 rushers for over 100 yards. I believe that's the first time that's been done in quite some time against Philly's defense. That's a big concern. Hopefully that was just a blip in the radar. The O-line of the Chargers, I think, is a big issue here. Obviously, the health of Justin Herbert for the Chargers. He essentially has the same thing Aaron Rodgers had a couple weeks ago that made him miss the Chicago game. A broken non-throwing hand. We'll see. He is, I believe, probably going to play, but he's day-to-day as we speak. Speaking of the Eagles, unfortunate news for the Eagles. Definitely this game, maybe multiple going forward. No Jalen Carter. That's going to be tough for this defense. But we shall see. In terms of this game, look, I've always been fascinated on how they bet or how they, I guess, handicap the Chargers road games or home games, I should say, that are going to be essentially home game or road games for them. I think there's going to be a lot of Eagles fans there. With that being said, I like the Chargers. Give me a half a point. I think if anything, the Eagles might eke out a field goal victory, but this is a big time moment for the Eagles. They have to figure it out here, or else the Cowboys are coming right behind them. Big game for them tonight here on Thursday, which we aren't talking about. But in terms of the over-under, it's a very, very low number, but I'm still going to go under. I don't think the Eagles offense is going to be able to click as well as needed on the road. Honestly, maybe a little less pressure, so that might help. But give me the under 40.5. I think this has a 20-17 game written all over it. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Philadelphia at the Chargers.
Yeah, I wish I could be upset because my team is 8-4. I can't. I just can't because we're not anywhere near 8-4. But as far as the Eagles going into the nice controlled climate, if you will, it's going to be a wonderful day up in Los Angeles. They're going to get good coverage. It's Monday Night Football, so it'll be, a balmy, probably 70 degrees at kickoff because we're actually going to have a heat wave, I believe, next week.
Yeah.
What's going to happen for Philadelphia? I think Jalen Hurts puts together a good game, and I think Saquon Barkley is going to have one of those old-time Saquon Barkley games against the Chargers. I can see that happening. I think that the Eagles' offensive line is going to control everything up front. Now, on the Charger side of the ball, I know that they've said they're really not sure if he will miss any time. But when you are this close to catching a playoff spot, do you put Justin Herbert out there? That's a big risk. Or do you just let Trey Lance go out there and try to keep it competitive against the Eagles, which is not going to be an easy thing for Trey if you're Trey Lance. However, I think what's going to happen when all is said and done, give me a half a point. I like the Eagles -2.5 in this one. And I also like the under, but give me a point, make it under 41.5 for me.
Yeah, it's going to be game two very different because I think the Chargers, obviously they are fighting for a playoff spot, but this is an out of conference game, no real tiebreakers up in the air. I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world to see Justin Herbert, obviously as an Eagle fan, but even just if you're thinking overall, might be best to see if Trey Lance can get it figured out. But who knows? Maybe Jalen Carter not being there, that alleviates some worry from the Chargers coaching staff going forward. But we shall see. That's going to be Monday night, a really good one, especially considering how bad this past Monday night's game was. 8-4 versus 8-4 should be much more competitive than Giants Patriots. But I digress. Moving on to our final NFC East game to preview. It's going to be the Washington Commanders heading to Minnesota to face the Minnesota Vikings. Commanders are going to be 2-point favorites in this one. The over-under is 42. Washington -135 on the money line. Minnesota +115. As I kind of mentioned when I talked about my Week 13 thoughts, maybe JJ McCarthy isn't exactly as bad as we thought. We shall see. He does look like he is trending towards playing. Maybe Max Brosmer's performance helped that. But I do think this is a big time show me moment for JJ McCarthy because Washington's defense is arguably right there when it comes to right there with Cincinnati, I should say, when it comes to bottom of the league. They're at the bottom in all three main categories I look at, which is run defense, pass defense, and points allowed or points per game allowed. The only other team that has 3 in the bottom 6 is Cincinnati. So that's not a great place to be. Does not seem like Jaden Daniels is going to play. We're recording here on Thursday, and he's still not cleared for contact. So I don't see that changing anytime soon. This feels like a trap to me, but I'm not doing that. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to go out there. I really do think Minnesota has a lot of advantages here. As bad as their defense has been, I think Washington's is even worse, and I think Minnesota has a better offense than what Washington can put together. So again, looks a little fishy. I'll even, buy a full point just to not worry about, a field goal. So give me Minnesota +3. I do like the over here, though, because again, I think for two defenses, I know their offenses aren't world beaters the way they're currently constructed, but 42 for these two defenses seems a little too low for me. But Raider Jim, your thoughts, Washington at Minnesota.
Yeah, J.J. McCarthy, this is going to be very interesting to see him go back out there under center, and best of luck to him and Kevin O'Connell. But you know what? For as bad as the Washington defense is, if you look at both of these two teams for the last few weeks, Washington has really played very, very competitive ball. As you said earlier, they pushed the Broncos to the limit, and doggone, they came close. Marcus Mariota still has it, if you ask me. I would wish he was still the backup in Las Vegas, because I would welcome him under center any day of the week compared to what we have right now. I think the Washington offense is going to come out, put up some points, as will the Vikings. But I really think Washington's defense is going to play a game that's very out of what they have been playing this season. They're going to hold Minnesota. Minnesota might be a little too jittery, for lack of a better word. It might be a little too tentative and hesitant when they get out there. So give me Washington on the money line on this one. And I like the over. Give me a half a point, though, and give me over 41.5.
Yeah, it's an interesting scenario for Washington going forward. I mean, I don't want to just throw an L at them right now, but you do kind of wonder if they do take a loss here, do they just maybe look at Jaden Daniels and go, hey, young fella, let's get ready for 2025. Because that I think might be a scenario that we are coming towards very, very soon. Moving on, a huge AFC South matchup. We have the Indianapolis Colts 2-point favorites. They are heading to Jacksonville to face the Jaguars. 47.5 is our over-under. Indy is -125 on the money line. Jacksonville is +105. Raider Jim, it looks like you're frozen on my end. Are you still there? Oh, looks like we lost Raider Jim. We'll see if he pops back in. But we got the Raider talk out from him. But I will vamp, or at least give my thoughts, until Mr. Martinez is able to pop in again. But we have Indy -2, 47.5 is your over-under. I think this is a huge, I know this is a huge AFC South matchup. May very well go a long way towards determining the winner of the division. I'm sure the Texans, of course, have something to say about that. But I think these are two teams trending in very different directions. Ironically, because early in the season, these were two teams that were trending in the wrong direction. But vice versa for them both. Indy is obviously struggling essentially since that fourth quarter against Kansas City. They seem to have... Oh, there is Raider Jim. Can you hear me, Mr. Martinez?
I can see you too. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Problem.
It said
no
connection's gone.
It happens. We are good. But yeah, I'm just talking the Colts and Jaguars, obviously huge AFC South matchup. But just to kind of recap so far, two teams trending in the wrong direction. And again, that fourth quarter against Kansas City, I don't know if maybe that was midnight for the Colts, but it seems like they've been kind of trending downward since that. And I know it's only been 2 games, or not even. But it's been tough for the Colts. For Jacksonville, however, they have been trending upwards, and obviously looking at the Colts, as I think actually the Jaguars hold the tiebreaker as of right now, so they are in the lead of the AFC South, I believe. In this one, though, I just think I'm just going to run with the trends. I like what Jacksonville's been put together. They're a home dog, which I love just in general. So give me Jacksonville +2 here. In terms of the over-under, 47.5. I think it's a bit much. The Daniel Jones MVP talk has cooled off a bit. And, I'm not going to sit here and say Daniel Jones is going to return to New York Giants Daniel Jones, but I do think maybe we are getting closer to what Daniel Jones may be more consistently. And I've liked what Liam Cohen and everyone there, even Trevor Lawrence. It's not flashy. It's kind of ugly, and it's very similar to how they beat Kansas City, that last play where Trevor Lawrence just falls over himself and looks around and goes, oh, hey, I can still get up and run it in. That's kind of how Jacksonville's season has gone. Hasn't been pretty, but they've gotten the job done thus far. I don't see that changing here. Again, love me a road dog, especially momentum wise. Give me Jacksonville +2 under 47.5. Raider Jim, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is going to come down to who makes the fewest mistakes. Turnovers are going to kill somebody. I don't know who it's going to be. Now, the one thing I haven't heard yes or no on is, will Daniel Jones even be playing? Guy has a fractured fibula, which a lot of people say, well, that's not a big deal, really. Well, you go out there with a cracked shin bone and tell me it doesn't hurt every time somebody, barrels you over and throws you into the ground. Daniel Jones doesn't make it through the game. Neither do the Colts. That's the way that's going to go. And if I was, I don't know if you have heard, is he going to play?
Honestly, I didn't even, because he played last week. I think in my head, I just assumed. But no, that's a great point. I didn't even really bring that up. But also looking at the spread, I would have to imagine that seems like they're expecting him to play. But just thoughts off the top of my head, because again, up until about 30 seconds ago, it really hadn't crossed my mind because he did play last week. Maybe not great, but yeah.
Yeah. And so again, what we've got is Indianapolis is favored -2 on the road, which is very interesting to me. Daniel Jones fractured fibula. Go back to the Justin Herbert thing where it's a non-throwing hand. Well, this is a leg. So it's not like you can say this is a non-throwing leg. He's only got 2. Why do you want to risk him? Why do you want to put him out there when you are fighting to stay atop your conference and you're fighting for your playoff life or your position in the playoffs? Because guess what's going to happen? It's going to come down to somebody's going to lose this game on Sunday. And if Houston takes care of business against the Chiefs, we're going to have another tie. It's a different level of tie. So going to be very interesting to see. I like what Jacksonville's been doing. Like you said, may not be pretty, but it don't matter if it ends up in the win column. I like Jacksonville on the money line on this one. Showers in Jacksonville on Sunday, so I will also take the under because I don't think the ball's going to be one for getting out there and throwing long games or anything like that.
Yeah, and I'll throw one little wrench in the Daniel Jones saga. Look, I do believe the fibula is a non-weight bearing bone. So that's how he's able. But I've heard people talking about it who they've had it, and they're like, yeah, you can walk, but like you certainly can't run. But I mean, he's getting out there and he's very, very tough. But the other part of it too, and maybe this is too cynical or anything like that, but look, Daniel Jones is playing on a 1-year contract right now.
Yep.
So again, as sports fans, we want to assume that these guys are going to give it their all, no matter what. But maybe for his sake, he might need to look in the mirror and go, hey, at least give me a couple weeks to figure this out. You don't need to shut yourself down. But I don't know. That's a great point that you brought up. But I think at the very least, he has a broken bone in his leg. Like that's kind of all you need to know. It's pretty wild that he's still going out there, but we shall see. Moving on to another very pivotal divisional matchup. It is going to be the very, very surprising current number 1 seed in the NFC, although they have the lowest odds of all division leaders to get the 1 seed in the NFC, which is kind of funny. Anyways, it is the Bears. They're heading to Lambeau, a good old-fashioned NFC North rivalry. The Packers are going to be 6.5-point favorites in this one. 44.5 is your over-under. Plus 255 for Chicago on the money line. Green Bay sits at -310. Raider Jim, I'll give you first bite at the apple. That is the Bears at Packers.
This must be this week's game of who handicapped this, because for everything I'm seeing, you look at the straight head-to-head standings. Chicago's up in first place because Green Bay has the tie. Points against, granted, Packer defense much, much better, more stout. So can they shut down the Bears offense? Probably, but the Bears offense has been looking pretty good the whole season long. It is their defense. Their defense gives up a little bit too much. I don't think they give up 6.5 points worth, though, on the road like this. I have a feeling they will come out. It will be competitive. It's going to be clear in Green Bay with a high of 16 degrees, so cold that it can't snow. So I have a feeling you're going to see a lot of running, and we'll see what happens with that. I do like the Bears +7 on this one, but I'm going to have to go under on this, under 45, because just too cold.
Yeah, I see it both ways, or I see it similarly on both accounts, I should say. Yeah, it's very, very odd. This is a game that I expect Green Bay to win, but this is a big number. And again, you can look at Chicago, and the one thing that jumps out to me, of course, when I always look over these stats and all that stuff, is the turnover differential is absolutely insane for the Bears. +17. The next closest team is +9. And there's multiple there. And while that is very, very impressive, some of that, and look, the interceptions are the interceptions, but when it comes to fumbles, that's kind of comes down to luck a lot of the time. Try to dribble a football and see how that goes, and see how, easy it is to pick up a fumble. So I'm just wondering how long that mojo continues. But again, I mean, better than +1 in the turnover differential every game thus far, or at least on average, I should say. Will that continue? I do think it will. Even if maybe we don't see as much passing with the weather and all that stuff. And I will say, as good as Caleb Williams has been this year, he's been good. It's been the run game for the Bears that has really set the tone. I think Ben Johnson, I think everyone kind of came in and we were going to see Jared Goff type stuff out of Caleb Williams, because of course Ben Johnson came from the Lions last year. I think Ben Johnson has said, no, I'm actually going to turn DeAndre Swift and I'm not going to try it again, and the other gentleman I'll turn them into Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. So that's been very, very impressive. Now, as you mentioned, Green Bay's defense might be the best in the NFC outside of Seattle. So that's going to be a big test. Cold weather. I think this definitely stays under 44.5. And I think 6.5 is too much. Like you, I'm going to buy that half a point. Give me Chicago +7. Would not be surprised to see Green Bay win this on a last-second field goal. A 2-point win, something like that. And I think the Bears, again, as good as they've been, I don't see them winning the North. Either whether the Lions or Packers run them down at the end of the day. I would be very, very surprised if the Bears can hold on, just with their schedule coming up. And as good as they've been, I think they're a bit above water. They're above where they should be right now. But Raider Jim, your thoughts? Green Bay. Oh no, I'm sorry. You already moving on. We are moving on to Pittsburgh. Sometimes you talk just too long and you just vamp, and you're like, wait, did you? Anyways, moving on to a third straight divisional matchup. Maybe, I mean, the stakes are there, but in terms of the curb appeal, if you will, not anywhere near some of these other games. This is going to be a tough one to watch. Pittsburgh heading to Baltimore. The Ravens -5.5. The over-under sits at 43. Pittsburgh +230 on the money line. Baltimore -280. Raider Jim, I'll give this one to you first. Pittsburgh at Baltimore, big AFC North matchup. Uh-oh. Might have lost Raider Jim one more time. I believe so. All right. So I'll get this one started, as hopefully we wait for Raider Jim to pop back in. Look, my notes I have down right here, just kind of thinking nostalgically as how good this rivalry must have been or used to be, or at least in terms of can't miss TV. Now it seems like unless this is, a Thursday night and I'm, really jonesing for football, I'm definitely not going to be checking this one out. It's very, very difficult to see how this will go when you have two teams, Pittsburgh, who was so bad last week, and Baltimore, who it seems like flip a coin. Raider Jim is back, it looks like. Yes. Can you hear me, Mr. Martinez?
I'm making every effort.
Yes.
I can. Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. No problem. But it seems like Baltimore is a flip of a coin, whether or not we are going to see this team perform to, the levels that we did when Lamar first came back. And then Thursday night or, Thanksgiving night, we all expected, okay, they're going to hold serve. Joe Burrow's going to be rusty. And all of a sudden, the Bengals just kind of boat raced them in that one. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, two teams that I just don't think are very good. Raider Jim brought up the Bengals and Joe Burrow. Here he comes. They are still very much in the hunt, but only in the hunt for the AFC North. This might be a game, if you want to get crazy, maybe take a tie. I could see this game being like a 6-6 tie. It just seems like that just has it written down, being a little tongue-in-cheek there. I'll just take the points. Two teams that I just don't trust either way. Give me Pittsburgh plus 5.5 and under 43. I don't see how either of these offenses get there. I haven't seen enough from Lamar Jackson since he's come back to make me believe that he is going to push this number over. And same thing with Pittsburgh, their offense. And I have to imagine, as Raider Jim kind of talked about, I know the weather back east is going to be very cold at the very least. So 43, I think, is a high number for these offenses. And I have my final thought here. The AFC North should be shot into the moon. No one deserves a playoff spot. But Raider Jim, your thoughts, Pittsburgh at Baltimore.
Yeah, this is just not the same Pittsburgh team that we got used to seeing, for so many decades, so many years. And even before Aaron Rodgers showed up, it was iffy at quarterback at times, but still they were the Steelers and the defense got out there and you always knew the defense was going to get after it. The defense is now 28th in the league. And that is not, my goodness, that makes the Joe Greens and the LC Greenwoods of the world just look and go, what happened? Kind of like Howie Long must look out there at the Raiders and go, what happened? And Baltimore on the other side of that, as you said, Baltimore's not that much better. Obviously not. Both of these teams are 6-6 right now with Joe Burrow sitting in the background going, you guys didn't run away and you should have, because I'm going to catch you. And I really do believe that that's a very good chance that he's going to. Before I get to my question for you, I will tell you that when I look at this one, I see Baltimore winning. I think the Pittsburgh defense is just not good enough to even stop a subpar Lamar Jackson. So I'll take Baltimore at the line 5.5, and but I'm going to go under because it's also supposed to rain in Baltimore wherever they're playing, and if that's going to be a muddy, mucky field, there's not going to be a lot of scoring going on. Question to you is, are Lamar Jackson's best days behind him?
I feel like we have this conversation at least once a year, and not us, but just overall
yes.
Yeah, it seems like once a year or once a season, I should say, we have these, maybe outside of his MVP years, which, I mean, he's won 2 of them, I believe. I don't know. I don't want to say yes, but also at the same time, what Lamar Jackson is so good at doing will go before anything else. The legs, the mobility will go before the arms, before the mind, before the progressions. That's the first thing that's going to go. So, it kind of reminds me a bit of pitchers in baseball. I think back to Trevor Hoffman. Okay, he in his heyday, in his prime, he's throwing 97. Well, guess what? He pitched till he was maybe in his 40s, deep into his 30s. And by the time he was retired, he was throwing that fastball in there at 80, 89. But his changeup was dropping down to 80. So he was able to adjust because the velocity was gone. So, kind of obviously apples to oranges. But I think for Lamar, at the very least, this is a moment for him to look around and go, hey, if I want to play for another 5 to 10 years at a high level, I'm going to need to evolve my game beyond relying on my legs. That's just my thought on it. I'm not ready to pull the plug on Lamar because it does seem like we do that sometimes. And the next week, it's like, oh my gosh, there he is. There's the Lamar from Louisville or the Lamar from the MVP type seasons. And who knows, maybe this is the defense to do it against, although the weather doesn't sound like that's going to cooperate. But definitely this is the defense to do it against. But moving on to maybe the most intriguing game outside of the divisional matchups of the weekend. And it is the aforementioned Cincinnati Bengals. Oh, are they back? They certainly are. What a performance on Thanksgiving night. The Bengals heading to Buffalo to face the Bills, who also seem to have maybe figured something out. The Bills are going to be 6-point favorites. The over-under is 52.5. Cincinnati plus 220 on the money line. Buffalo minus 270. It's a major fork in the road type game for both of these teams because Cincinnati, no room for error if they want to make the playoffs. And for Buffalo, no room for error to win the division. And still not a whole lot of room for error to make the playoffs either. Raider Jim, your thoughts, Cincinnati at Buffalo.
Now, if you would have told me at the beginning of this season that Cincinnati and Buffalo would be a game I'm looking forward to see, I'd say you're out of your mind. But I'm really looking forward to this one. I want to see what Cincinnati brings to the table. And perhaps just that offensive spark of having Joe Burrow under center and the victory they were able to pull out the other day, maybe that's enough to light a spark under the defense and get them to play a little better football on the defensive side of the ball to give that team a fighting chance. Now, on the other side, too, Buffalo, if you'd have told me that we'd be looking at Buffalo with 4 losses at this juncture of the season, I'd say, no, there's no way. They're supposed to run away with the division, not be in second place. 2 of all people, the New England Patriots. Wow, what a turn of events in this division. So the AFC East, kind of up for grabs, but it all depends on what Buffalo can do for the rest of the season. They're going to have their work cut out for them on Sunday. 29 degrees and snow. So because there's going to be snow during that game, I like Cincinnati's offensive production. Give me Cincinnati plus 7 and give me under the 52.5 because I think it's going to be miserable conditions.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I did put these numbers together on Tuesday. I do wonder if that 52.5 has dropped with the weather report coming out, just because, 52.5. And I know Cincinnati's defense is not good, and Buffalo's run defense is very, very, very bad. I believe they're definitely at the bottom of the league, might still be worse. But the one thing, Buffalo's defense, very good against the pass. So it's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde situation inside there. But in terms of Cincinnati, I don't think Corey Dillon's walking through that door anytime soon. So I don't know how much they'll be able to take advantage of a bad Buffalo defense. I did switch my pick to under 52.5 when I heard that weather report. As good as Joe Burrow and Josh Allen are in those moments or in those games, I think early season snow is going to definitely complicate that 52.5 very high number. I like Buffalo here as well. I think this is, again, as I mentioned, a fork in the road game. And as good as Cincinnati, that story would be, nobody wants to see Cincinnati's defense in the playoffs. Trust me, it's so bad. I think this is a moment for Buffalo. They know they have to win this game and they have to win next week against the Patriots in order to win the AFC East. And they do feel like that is still not only a very real possibility, but a must, I believe, for them. So give me Buffalo. I am going to buy a half a point. Buffalo minus 5.5, and I am going to go under 52.5 on that one. Going to be an interesting one. Yes.
And Vegas Insider, current right now, actually has it over 53.5.
Oh my gosh. It's moving up. Okay, then. All right. That's even better.
It opened at 49.5, and now it's at 53.5.
Well, that's very interesting. That's crazy. Huh. Anyways, moving on to our final kind of other games that we're just going to kind of talk or gloss over, I should say. And yes, I do apologize to all the Browns and Titans fans out there. We just couldn't make time for the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are going to be 4-point favorites in that one. 34. I repeat, 34 is your over-under in the Cleveland-Tennessee game. Elsewhere, right? Elsewhere, you have the Miami Dolphins, 2.5-point favorites on the road as they head to face the Jets. 40.5 is your over-under there. The Seattle Seahawks, who I don't think enough people are talking about as one of the best teams in the league. We didn't talk about them this week, but that's because they're facing off against the Falcons, and they're 7-point favorites on the road. 44.5 is your over-under. The Los Angeles Rams, they're heading to the desert to face the Cardinals. The Rams are going to be 7.5-point favorites. 48 is your over-under. And finally, shout out to Coach. He's still plowing through. The Saints have been, pleasantly a little bit better than expected. There might be something there with Tyler Shuck. But they have a big task as they head to Tampa Bay to face Baker's Bucks. The Buccaneers are going to be 9-point favorites. The over-under sits at 42.5. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Any of those things or any of those lines jump out to you?
You know what? Those games do absolutely nothing for me. But what I will tell you, though, when you mentioned the Seahawks and you mentioned the Rams, might as well just talk about the NFC West, because that is the absolute best conference in football as far as I'm seeing it. I don't know how you feel about that, but very competitive, like the way all those teams are playing.
I agree. I think the AFC South might have something to say about that, but they also do have the Titans that would perk up, and that might slow things down. But I agree. I do think the Seattle Seahawks, I think the Seattle Seahawks are right now the best team in the league. They are playing the best. They're winning football. They have an identity. Let me put it to you this way. If Russell Wilson was the quarterback of this team, and I don't mean what Russell Wilson is now, I just mean what Russell Wilson was in Seattle in his prime, we'd all be falling over ourselves saying this is by far the best team in the league. But I do think because it's Sam Darnold, still a lot of people that aren't fully sold on him, and I might kind of be one of them, but I am getting ready to buy stock in Sam Darnold, even if it will be too expensive by the time I get there, more than likely. 7 points on the road, I do think that's a lot, but they have handled their business very emphatically a lot this year. They have covered some of the bigger spreads. And I do like New Orleans, +9. I don't know. Like I said, Tyler Shuck, I don't think you're going to win a lot with him, but I think he's definitely a step up from Spencer Rattler. Again, the Derek Carr the Derek Carr treatment, how that would have gone, I don't know. Be wondering to see all those people who wanted Derek Carr out of there so badly. I wonder how they're feeling right now. But anyways, I do like New Orleans +9 there. I just think that's a big number for a divisional game, even though it is in Tampa. And who knows, we might have a little bit of weather that could muddy some stuff up. If Jacksonville's getting weather, maybe Tampa will too. I am not a geography expert, but those are just some of the things that jumped out to me. Again, apologies to all the Titan heads and the Brown fans out there that were really chomping at the bit to get our analysis on the toilet bowl. I mean, that game, excuse me. But hey, that will go a long way in determining more than likely who does get the number 1 overall pick. And one little subplot, I'm just going to throw a little bit of gasoline onto the fire that is the Cleveland Browns. some news that broke today. Deshaun Watson, his practice window has opened up. He is possibly available. I don't think we're going to see him this week, but I would not be surprised to see Deshaun Watson by the end of the season, just to throw a little bit of gasoline on that dumpster fire that is the Cleveland Browns.
Can you imagine? They put him out there instead of Sanders?
Oh, I would love it. I mean, and I think you have to. I mean, whatever you think.
You do. Give the fans something to talk about.
Exactly. And in a court of law, we haven't seen any guilty verdicts. Again, we all have our preconceived notions when you have 24 allegations, but he served his suspension. He hasn't been given any jail time, so he has every right to start, and the Browns have every right to try to milk whatever they can out of that terrible contract. But yeah, it's just something to think about, because going down the line, that would be a great, not great, but a juicy topic to dive into. But final segment before we get into our final thoughts, it is going to be our best bets. Went 2 for 3 on week's 12's episode. I was able to get the Atlanta money line and the Chicago -2.5. But yeah, the Giants and Lions, the Giants playing very well. Jameis Winston playing very well. Therefore, the Lions, for the Giants, pushed that number over. But Raider Jim, any best bets for you this week?
Yeah, actually, I've got a few. I do like the Houston +4 over the Chiefs. I like the Eagles -2.5 over the Chargers, and give me Jacksonville money line, because as much as I still like the way Daniel Jones is playing, I think Jacksonville's going to take that one. Oh, and just to follow up on a comment your question you threw out there in the universe, it is going to be likely rain showers at Tampa Bay with a temperature of 78 degrees, so it's going to be humid, is what it's going to be.
What a Florida day! You could have told me that weather report, and I would have said somewhere in Florida. But yeah, that is wow. I'm sure there are some people up east that would kill for 78 degrees, even if it's raining pigs. Anyways, but Jackson, my best bets, I have 4 of them. 2 of them are actually going to be in that Jacksonville Indianapolis game. I like Jacksonville -2 in that one, and under 47.5. I think me and Raider Jim are going to kind of be on the opposite side of Kansas City going forward with our best bets, because I like Kansas City -3.5. And finally, I have the under 52.5 for Cincinnati and Buffalo. I actually added that when you told me that the line actually moved up. So I do think, with the rain, or with the snow, I should say, and at the very least, very cold, blustery winter weather, I think under 52.5 is a good bet in the Cincinnati Buffalo game. But Raider Jim, your final thoughts as we look forward to week 14.
Final thoughts, and it's going to be my final thought probably each and every week until we hit the Christmas week, and that is Thanksgiving was last week, a lot to be thankful for, and then again at times there were not, because we had a couple traffic incidents out here in Southern California and San Diego. Folks, it's that time of year. Don't be stupid. If you want to have a cocktail, have a cocktail. I'm not telling anybody they should not drink. However, be responsible, be smart, think about your family, think about everybody else's family that you may come in contact with while you're out on the road. Just be smart, don't drink, don't drive, no drugs, no drive, and just be safe for everybody.
Amen. Yeah, and we are getting that time. I mean, it's important every time of the year, but definitely this time of year, more people out on the road, more kids out and about. And yeah, as I always said, even as a bartender, if you can afford to go out and drink at those prices, you can afford to catch an Uber home. And you know what? If you got to catch an Uber back to the bar in the morning to get your car, then it's a lot easier than ruining someone else's life, your life, or anything like that. Mine's going to be a little more lighthearted. This is probably a few weeks too late. But between kind of the Thanksgiving break and, a couple weeks ago, more important things to talk about. But here in San Diego, obviously, the news about the San Diego Padres came out, or their situation, and they're on the block, or at least the sales block. And again, We mentioned it the week of. The First Off the Bench podcast network has officially pulled out of the sweepstakes. Our final offer was $83. And 40 of it was going to be paid in loose change. So they said, thank you, but no, thank you. They are not interested. But with that being said, it's very, very unfortunate that the Peter Seidler saga, or the Peter Seidler ownership, or the Seidler ownership group ownership is going to come to end like this.
Yeah.
I understand it is not easy. Peter seemed to have been very wholeheartedly in on the plan that he was going to do whatever it took to get a championship to San Diego. And by God, he got as close as almost anyone has in the past. Unfortunately, obviously, cancer took him before we were able to see all the way through. And you know what? I'll also be able to sit here and be self-aware enough to say that I don't think it was fair for us to all believe that the Seidler brothers or whoever were just going to be as altruistic and ready to take on the burden that Peter had. However, my problem with the way all this has gone is for the last 18 months, every single soundbite we get from the Seidler family it ends with, and this is when we are just continuing Peter's legacy. We are just continuing Peter's legacy. I hate to say it, and with all due respect to the Seidlers that are still in on all this, you have bastardized that name in terms of how San Diegans now look at it, because that was your get out of jail free card. And again, if this was the plan the whole time, I get it. The Padres, it's not an easy bill to take on, and it might come back to bite you in trying to sell this team, but you shouldn't have strung the city along for 18 months and made us believe that you were going to continue what Peter started. It was fine if you didn't have the gumption to do it, but the fact that you gave us false hope, shame on you. And I really truthfully do hope that the sale of the Padres goes to someone who is ready to do what needs to be done to at least compete in Major League Baseball. I don't think it's fair to expect an owner to deliver championships, but I do think it's fair to expect an ownership group to compete financially at a level top 15, top 10. And that's what Peter wanted to do. Plus, and again, I'll give you the credit. Maybe not everybody's ready to do all that. I just hope the next person that comes in is ready to hopefully deliver something to San Diego that we've never had. But again, to the Seidlers, and then just shame on you. Again, I don't judge you for doing what you had to do. I just judge you the way you did it and the way you went about it for the last 18 months. But with that being said, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the NFL Weekly here on the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for y'all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We'll talk to y'all very soon. Take care.